The signal came out of nowhere, faint but impossible to ignore. Deep in the void of space, the humans monitoring the galactic scanners froze. The pattern was not random. It had order, intent. It was a call, a request, from a world so far that even the fastest ships would take months to reach. On Earth, the United Nations Space Command gathered quickly. They had been expecting many things, alien probes, strange phenomena, maybe even explorers, but never a plea for troops. The message was simple and shocking: we need soldiers. Send your best. The galaxy depends on it. Captain Mira Solis stared at the message, her brow furrowed. Her mind raced. Troops, she muttered. For what? Who are they? Nobody knew. The voice, or the being behind the transmission, never answered questions. It simply repeated the request. Humans were being asked to leave their homes, to fight in a war they didn't understand. Most officers saw it as an opportunity to prove humanity's strength among the stars. Mira, however, felt a chill in her gut. Within weeks, the first fleet was prepared. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, and scientists boarded sleek starships. The journey would take months, but time was never a problem when the future of humanity was at stake. On the bridge of the lead ship, Mira watched the stars stretch into lines of light as the engines engaged. Around her, the crew buzzed with nervous energy. Some were excited, some afraid. All were curious about what lay ahead. "Do you think they'll even survive contact?" asked Lieutenant Haroon, his voice low. He had trained for combat his whole life, but this uncertainty, made him uneasy. Mira didn't answer. Instead, she stared at the endless darkness outside, feeling the weight of responsibility. She had commanded soldiers in countless exercises, but this was different. This was real. And somewhere out there, waiting for them, was something no human had ever faced before. When the fleet finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the alien world revealed itself. It was enormous, larger than Earth, with jagged mountains that glowed faintly under an emerald sky. The cities, if they could be called that, floated above the surface like enormous bubbles. Energy pulsed within them, almost alive, as if the planet itself breathed with power unknown to humans. The first transmission from the aliens arrived moments later. The voice was unlike any human language, but the translation devices worked flawlessly. "Welcome, humans. Your courage honors us. Prepare for your orders. Your duty begins now." The soldiers disembarked carefully, scanning every inch of the strange terrain. Gravity was slightly stronger than Earth's, and the air had a faint metallic taste. But what unnerved them most was the silence. Not a single sound of life came from below the floating cities. No movement, no creatures, nothing. Just quiet, and the eerie hum of energy. Mira led her team up a glowing ramp that extended from one of the floating structures. The walls shimmered, reflecting colors humans had no names for. She kept her hand near her sidearm, although she had no reason to draw it yet. Something felt wrong. Inside the alien structure, they were met by beings unlike anything humans had imagined. Tall, almost translucent, their bodies glimmered like glass filled with liquid light. They had no mouths, yet they spoke directly into the minds of the humans. "Your mission is simple. Fight for us. Defeat our enemies. Ensure the galaxy's survival." Mira swallowed hard. Something about their words was off. There was no explanation of who their enemies were, no strategy given, only orders. The more the alien spoke, the more she felt a growing tension in her chest. The soldiers were eager, though. They had trained for combat, for challenges, for glory. And this mysterious call to arms, was the ultimate test. They trusted their captain, and they trusted each other. But trust alone would not be enough here. At night, under the green sky, Mira walked alone along the edge of the floating city. The stars below looked small, distant, like tiny holes in a dark curtain. And then she saw it, shadows moving beneath the city. Fast. Too fast. Not alien, not human, but something else. She reached for her communicator. "Lieutenant Haroon, Report any movement outside the city, she ordered, her voice tight. But when she looked back, the shadows had vanished. Only the hum of the city remained. Something told Mira that humans were not being sent as allies, they were being tested. The aliens were not asking for soldiers, they were asking for pawns. And what humans didn't know could kill them. Back in the command center, the aliens watched. They observed every human movement, every decision. But they were not the only ones studying the others. Humans had begun to notice patterns, small things that didn't fit. The aliens' energy pulses, the way their orders were always too convenient, too perfect. Myra's mind raced. If these beings wanted warriors, she would give them warriors, but not the kind the aliens expected. Humans were resourceful, cunning, and unpredictable. And if the aliens thought they were sending mere soldiers, they were about to be surprised. The first mission was scheduled at dawn. No details were given, only coordinates and the command, eliminate the threat. Mira felt the cold weight of responsibility. She looked at her soldiers, all eager and ready. They trusted her, and she would not fail them. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that humanity was about to do more than survive. They were about to redefine what it meant to fight in the galaxy. And the executioners were being born. The next day, the human fleet moved closer to the surface. The glowing cities floated silently above the jagged terrain, as if they were watching. Mira led her team down the ramps and onto the alien ground, boots crunching over rocks that glimmered faintly under the green sky. At first, everything seemed calm. The air smelled faintly metallic, but breathable. Strange plants, with stalks that seemed to pulse with energy, stretched across the land. Shadows flickered in the distance, always at the edges of vision, but whenever someone looked directly, they were gone. "Stay sharp," Mira warned. "This place is too quiet." The soldiers nodded, their hands on their weapons. Lieutenant Haroon, beside her, scanned the horizon with narrowed eyes. "I don't like this," he said. "Feels like we're walking into a trap." "Maybe we are," Mira replied. Her voice was calm, but inside she felt the same unease. The first mission's objective was vague, eliminate the threat. No details, no enemies named, only coordinates pointing deep into the jagged mountains. The humans moved carefully, forming small squads as they advanced. Every step felt heavy, every shadow suspicious. Hours passed without incident, and some soldiers began to relax. But Mira never let her guard down. She studied the patterns in the alien structures, the way energy pulsed through the floating cities. Something about it didn't make sense. It was too perfect, too controlled, as if someone, or something, was watching and testing them. Then the first attack came. From the rocks ahead, something emerged, a blur of movement, faster than any human could react to. Shadows twisted and elongated, forming shapes that were neither animal nor machine. They struck without sound, targeting the humans with precision. Mira shouted orders. "Spread out. Return fire." Blaster beams cut through the green haze, lighting up the rocks with streaks of energy. The shadows dodged effortlessly, moving in ways humans had never seen. Soldiers fell, vanishing in moments, leaving nothing but scorched ground. Panic rose, but Myra's voice remained steady. "Regroup at Point Delta," she yelled. Her team obeyed, moving with discipline despite the chaos. Mira watched as Lieutenant Haroon fired at a shadow, only to see it disappear into thin air. "They're not just strong," he said, breathing hard. "They're different. Faster than anything we trained for." Mira nodded. She understood immediately. These were not normal enemies. The aliens had said, eliminate the threat, but had not prepared humans for what that meant. The mission was designed to test them, to see how they would react under impossible conditions. As the team moved through the rocky terrain, Mira noticed something strange. The shadows seemed to avoid certain areas, almost as if guided by an invisible hand. She pointed it out to Haroon. "Look. They're moving in patterns. They're avoiding something." Haroon followed her gaze. "What is it?" "I don't know," Mira admitted. But it's a clue. They pressed forward, using every tactic they knew. Mira realized the key was not strength, but strategy. Humans had something the shadows did not: the ability to think, adapt, and predict. They could turn fear into advantage. Hours later, the humans reached a plateau. From there, they could see the entire valley below. And for the first time, the truth became clear. The threat was not a single enemy. It was an ambush, designed to kill without mercy. And the shadows were controlled, not by instinct, but by intelligence. Someone was directing them. Myra's mind raced. "We're not the attackers," she said quietly. "We're the prey." Haroon's eyes widened. "Then we need a new plan. Fast." They set traps using energy nets and blinding flares. Slowly, the shadows began to falter. Humans moved with careful precision, predicting every strike. What the aliens had not expected was human ingenuity. They adapted, learning quickly, using their fear to fuel their strategy. The battle lasted for hours. Soldiers fell, some injured, some lost entirely, but the humans pushed forward. Finally, the shadows scattered, retreating into the rocks as if they knew the humans had learned something new. Mira surveyed the battlefield, her heart pounding. The soldiers were exhausted, but alive. "This is only the beginning," she said. "They underestimated us. And we will use that." As night fell under the green sky, the floating cities above shimmered ominously. The aliens had watched the entire fight, recording every move, every decision. But Mira had seen their mistake. Humans were not predictable. Humans could fight back in ways no one expected. "Tomorrow," Mira said to her team, "we strike differently. We take the fight to them, not the other way around." The soldiers nodded, a mix of fear and determination in their eyes. They were far from home, in a world that wanted to kill them, yet they had survived. And survival, Mira knew, was the first step toward something greater. Somewhere deep beneath the valley, the shadows moved again, whispering in a language only they understood. But now, the whispers carried uncertainty. Humans were learning. Humans were dangerous. And the aliens, who had asked for soldiers, were about to meet the executioners. The wind howled across the plateau, carrying with it the promise of the battles to come. Mira stood at the edge, looking at the horizon. She did not see enemies, she saw opportunities. The fight had only begun, but already, she knew humanity would not be defeated. The night, under the green sky, was restless. Mira and her team did not sleep. They moved through the rocky terrain, checking equipment, analyzing the shadows' patterns, and planning their next move. Every corner, every ridge could hide another attack. Humans were far from home, but they were learning fast. "The shadows react to us," Lieutenant Haroon said quietly. "They're fast, intelligent. But they hesitate. They're not used to humans fighting back like this." Mira nodded, staring at the plateau below. "They think we're predictable. That's our advantage. Tonight, we turn it against them." Their plan was simple, yet daring. Using the terrain to their advantage, they would force the shadows into traps, strike from unexpected angles, and show the aliens that humans were not pawns, they were predators. As dawn broke, the green sky lit the jagged mountains in eerie shades. The shadows emerged again, faster, more organized than before. But this time, Mira was ready. Humans had studied their movements, learned their weaknesses. The first squad moved silently along the cliffs, firing energy nets that snared the shadows before they could strike. Blaster beams cut across the valley, but Myra's soldiers were precise. Every shot was calculated, every move anticipated. The shadows tried to dodge, to confuse, but humans adapted with terrifying speed. From the cliff above, Mira directed her soldiers like a chess master. "Left flank now. Trap them against the ridge," she shouted. The soldiers obeyed, moving with a discipline born of survival instinct. The shadows screamed, high-pitched, unearthly sounds that sent chills down human spines. But fear did not stop them. Humans pressed forward, learning with every strike. One shadow lunged at Lieutenant Haroon, but he twisted, fired, and it vanished in a flash of light. Faster than anything we've trained for, Haroon muttered, breathing heavily. But they're not ready for humans like this. The battle lasted hours. The aliens above watched, recording, calculating. They had asked for soldiers, expecting obedience, predictability. They had not expected humans to fight with intelligence, strategy, and courage. Myra's eyes scanned the valley. Some soldiers were wounded, some exhausted, but the humans had adapted. They were no longer prey, they were hunters. Each move, each decision, made the shadows hesitate. And hesitation was enough. In the chaos, Mira spotted something unexpected. The shadows were converging toward a glowing crater at the valley's center. It pulsed with energy, and Myra's mind raced. That was their target, their source of power. Destroy it, and they could disrupt the entire ambush network. Form a circle around the crater. Mira ordered. We hit it together. The soldiers obeyed, moving silently, cautiously. Blasters and energy nets at the ready. The shadows surged, sensing the humans' intent, but it was too late. With a coordinated strike, the humans attacked. Energy beams struck the crater, sending shockwaves across the valley. The ground shook, rocks flying, shadows scattering in confusion. The crater's energy pulsed wildly, then dimmed. The shadows faltered, their movements chaotic. The humans pressed the attack, relentless, striking where the shadows were weakest. Lieutenant Haroon looked at Mira, astonished. We did it. We actually did it. Mira did not answer. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The aliens had watched everything. They had seen humans survive what no other species could. And now, they knew humanity was dangerous. As the sun dipped behind jagged peaks, Mira gathered her soldiers. They were tired, wounded, but alive. More importantly, they were united. The humans had faced the unknown and prevailed, not through raw power, but through ingenuity, strategy, and courage. Today, we learned something important, Mira said, her voice steady. The shadows are fast, intelligent, and deadly. But humans are unpredictable. We think, we adapt, we fight back. That is why they will never control us. The soldiers nodded, a mix of exhaustion and pride in their eyes. They had survived impossible odds. They had become more than soldiers. They had become executioners. Deep beneath the valley, the remaining shadows moved in silence, whispering in a language the humans could not understand. The aliens observed, their plans disrupted, their control slipping. They had asked for troops, expecting pawns. Instead, they had unleashed a force they could not contain. Mira stared at the horizon, her mind already racing ahead. Tomorrow, they would strike again. But this time, the humans would not only survive, they would dominate. Each battle was a lesson, each victory a message. Do not underestimate humanity. As night fell, a quiet determination settled over the human camp. The soldiers patched wounds, checked weapons, and shared stories of the day's fight. They were far from home, in a strange world, but they were alive. And for the first time, they felt the power of what they could become. Mira stood alone for a moment, looking up at the floating cities. The aliens had watched everything. They would adapt. They would strike back. But Mira knew something they did not. Humans were not machines to be commanded. Humans were hunters, strategists, and survivors. And if the aliens thought they could control them, they were about to be proven wrong. The first strike had been a success. The humans had survived, adapted, and learned. The aliens had asked for soldiers, but they would get something else entirely. The executioners were rising. And the galaxy would never forget it. The night after the first strike was quiet, but Mira did not sleep. The humans had won the battle, but something felt wrong. The shadows had retreated, yet the floating cities above remained eerily still, as if waiting. Mira studied the alien energy patterns, looking for anything she might have missed. Lieutenant Haroon approached, carrying a small device that pulsed with light. "Captain, I ran scans on the crater. You were right, it wasn't just a defensive point. It was a hub. And it's connected to their control network. Whoever controls it can command the shadows, or worse." Mira frowned. "So we hit the wrong target." Haroon shook his head. "No. We didn't hit the wrong target. We weakened them. But this shows their real plan. They wanted to test us, train us, and now they have enough data to control how we fight." Myra's mind raced. The aliens had not called for help because they were in danger. They had called for humans because they wanted soldiers they could manipulate. Humans were supposed to be expendable tools, fighting someone else's war while the aliens stayed safe above. "We're not going to be their tools," Mira said, her voice firm. "If they want soldiers, they'll get executioners instead." The next day, the humans moved cautiously, using the lessons from the first battle. Every shadow movement, every energy pulse, was studied and tracked. Mira knew that intelligence would be the key to survival. The aliens had underestimated humans' ability to think, to adapt, to turn the tables. As they moved through the valley, Mira noticed a faint trail of energy running along the rocks. It was subtle, almost invisible, but distinct. She crouched and traced it with her hand. "This is their path," she whispered. "Something is feeding them information, controlling their attacks." Haroon looked at her, understanding immediately. "If we cut that link—" "Yes," Mira said. "We could disrupt the entire network. But it won't be easy." The humans planned carefully. They would move under the cover of darkness, using the terrain to remain hidden. Small squads would advance to the energy source while others set traps to block reinforcements. Every soldier knew the risk, yet no one hesitated. Humans were not just fighting for orders, they were fighting for survival, and for vengeance. Hours later, under the green sky, the squads moved. Shadows moved in the distance, alert but cautious. The humans used silence, strategy, and deception, advancing without being seen. When they reached the energy source, they discovered its true nature, a floating crystal, pulsing with alien energy, tethered to the floating cities by beams of light. Destroy it, and the aliens' control over the shadows would collapse. Mira raised her hand. "Prepare to strike. On my mark." The soldiers attacked together. Blaster beams struck the crystal, energy nets tangled the protective shadows, and for the first time, the aliens' power faltered. The crystal's light flickered, then dimmed. Shadows faltered, disoriented, moving randomly instead of following orders. From above, the floating cities shook. The aliens' command was being challenged for the first time. Mira watched as their calculated control slipped away. Humans had learned, adapted, and acted with precision. But the aliens were not defeated yet. Their response was swift and brutal. Energy surged from the cities, striking the humans' positions. Rocks exploded, and the ground shook violently. Soldiers were thrown off balance, some wounded, some pinned by debris. "Hold your ground," Mira shouted. "We've come this far. We finish this." Using the chaos to their advantage, the humans moved with calculated precision. They struck at weak points, used traps to neutralize the energy beams, and pressed forward. Each action was deliberate, a step toward reclaiming control of the battlefield. Finally, the crystal shattered under combined human fire. A pulse of energy rippled across the valley, knocking shadows to the ground and severing the connection between the floating cities and their minions. Silence followed, broken only by the labored breaths of Myra's soldiers. Haroon looked around, awe in his eyes. "We did it. We actually did it. They can't control the shadows anymore." Mira wiped sweat from her brow. "This is just the beginning. We've weakened them, but the real battle is ahead. They underestimated humans once. They won't make that mistake again." The humans regrouped, tending to the wounded and taking stock of their resources. They had learned something critical. The aliens' power came not from strength alone, but from control. And control could be broken. As night fell, Mira stood alone on a ridge, looking at the floating cities above. The aliens had watched every human move, every decision, every mistake, and now they had seen something unexpected. Humans were not just soldiers. They were thinkers, planners, and fighters who refused to be controlled. Somewhere deep within the cities, the alien leaders whispered in fear. The humans were learning, evolving, and growing stronger with each encounter. The plan to use them as pawns had failed. The executioners were no longer just a possibility. They were reality. Mira turned back to her team, determination in her eyes. "We've learned their secrets," she said quietly. "Now it's time to use them. We strike next, not to defend ourselves, but to take control. The galaxy will remember humanity. Not as soldiers, but as executioners." The soldiers nodded, understanding the gravity of what was to come. They were far from home, in a world that had tried to use them, but now they were united. Every step, every fight, had taught them something vital. Humans adapt, humans survive, and humans do not forgive easily. And the aliens, who had asked for soldiers, were about to meet the full force of human ingenuity. The green sky above the jagged mountains glowed faintly as Mira stood at the edge of the plateau. The shattered crystal still flickered in the valley below, a reminder of their first victory. The shadows had retreated, disoriented, and the floating cities pulsed with tension. Humans were no longer pawns. They were predators. "Captain," Lieutenant Haroun said, approaching with the tactical map. "The aliens are regrouping. They'll strike back soon, but we have the advantage now. Their command network is fractured." Mira nodded. "Good. Then we don't wait for them to attack. We take the fight to them." The plan was daring, even for humans. Infiltrate the lower levels of the floating cities, destroy their energy conduits, and force the aliens to face them directly. It was risky, but Mira knew humans had one weapon the aliens could never predict: creativity. Soldiers moved in squads, using shadows and terrain for cover. Energy nets and blinding flares hid their approach, while drones provided recon. Every step was calculated, every decision critical. Humans had learned from the first battles, and they were precise. The first city they reached was immense, a floating fortress of light and energy. Walls shimmered with alien technology, and the corridors twisted like labyrinths. Mira led the team inside, her pulse steady. They moved silently, disabling sensors and traps, always watching, always thinking. Then the first line of defense struck. Alien drones, sleek and deadly, appeared around a corner. Their energy weapons hummed, and they moved with impossible speed. "Hold your ground," Mira commanded. "We've trained for this. Focus, aim, fire." Blaster beams cut through the corridors. Humans dodged, rolled, and struck with precision. The drones were fast, but they were predictable. Patterns emerged. Humans exploited them, dismantling one after another. Within minutes, the hallway was cleared. "Impressive," Haroun said, panting. "We're not just fighting back, we're leading the fight." Myra's eyes were on the map. "Keep moving. We hit the energy conduits next. That's their lifeline." They reached the first conduit, a massive tower of pulsating energy, feeding the entire city. Mira signaled the demolition squad. Explosives were set with surgical precision, and a countdown began. "Everyone out," Mira shouted. The explosion rocked the city. Energy beams flickered and died, lights dimmed, and the shadows in the lower levels became chaotic. Humans moved through the chaos, striking with calculated attacks. Every alien drone, every automated defense, fell to the human strategy. From above, the alien leaders watched in disbelief. They had expected obedience, predictable soldiers, but humans had become something else entirely. The executioners were real, and they were unstoppable. In the chaos, Mira spotted an alien commander attempting to flee. It was tall, translucent, and glowing with energy. "After it!" she yelled. Soldiers pursued, moving like a single organism, surrounding the commander. The alien tried to communicate, projecting images and thoughts into human minds, but it was too late. Mira stepped forward. You wanted soldiers. You got executioners. With a final strike, the commander fell. The remaining drones paused, as if waiting for orders that would never come. The humans had seized control. Outside the city, the soldiers regrouped. They were battered, exhausted, but triumphant. The floating city trembled, no longer in command. Humans had rewritten the rules of the battle. Haroon looked at Mira, awe in his eyes. They thought they were training us, controlling us. They were wrong. Completely wrong. Mira nodded. This is only the beginning. One city falls, but the war is far from over. And every city that falls will teach the aliens the same lesson: never underestimate humanity. As the sun dipped behind jagged peaks, the remaining floating cities pulsed nervously. Humans had proven their strength, intelligence, and unpredictability. They had become executioners, not just soldiers. Mira surveyed her team. They were far from home, in a world designed to kill them, yet they had survived and conquered. Each battle had taught them something new. Each victory had sharpened their instincts, honed their strategy, and strengthened their resolve. We fight differently now, Mira said, her voice steady. We do not wait. We do not obey blindly. We strike, we adapt, we survive. And we do not forgive. The soldiers nodded. They were united, fierce, and unstoppable. The aliens had asked for soldiers, expecting pawns. Instead, they had unleashed the full power of humanity: cunning, strength, and relentless will. Deep in the floating cities, the alien leaders whispered urgently. The humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and growing stronger. Every battle was a lesson, every fight a warning. And the aliens realized something terrifying: they could not contain these executioners. Mira turned to the horizon, the green sky glowing faintly. Tomorrow, they would strike again. Every remaining city, every alien stronghold, would feel the power of humans who refused to be controlled. The galaxy would learn a new truth: humans were not just fighters, they were executioners. And the executioners would not stop until every threat had been eliminated, and every alien who underestimated them had learned their place. The green sky was darker now, tinged with streaks of red as the last floating cities trembled above the jagged mountains. Humans had struck again and again, each battle sharper, faster, and deadlier. The aliens had underestimated them from the start, and now they were paying the price. Mira stood at the edge of the plateau, looking at the horizon. Smoke rose from the shattered cities, and the faint hum of dying energy echoed across the valleys. The soldiers behind her were tired, battered, and wounded, but their eyes burned with determination. They were no longer just survivors. They were executioners. Lieutenant Haroon approached, carrying the tactical map. Captain, only one city remains. The alien leadership has concentrated there. It's heavily defended, but we have the advantage. Their control networks are broken, their drones scattered. If we strike now, we end this war. Mira nodded. Then we strike now. Every lesson we've learned, every tactic we've developed, every ounce of skill we have, we use it. Humanity does not retreat. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity executes. The final approach was silent, almost ghost-like. Soldiers moved through shadows, using debris and ruined structures for cover. Energy nets and flares disoriented the alien defenses, giving humans the opening they needed. Mira led the first squad, her pulse steady, her mind sharp. The city loomed above them, a fortress of shimmering energy. Inside, the alien leaders prepared their defenses, expecting obedience, expecting soldiers, expecting humans to act predictably. They were wrong. As the humans entered the city, the aliens unleashed their most advanced drones and automated defenses. Beams of energy cut through the corridors, walls shimmered with force fields, and alarms blared. But humans adapted instantly. They moved as one, striking from unexpected angles, using traps, decoys, and cunning to dismantle the defenses. Mira spotted the central command chamber. It was massive, a glowing nexus of energy and alien technology. The remaining leaders were inside, coordinating attacks that no longer had any effect. Humans had become too fast, too clever, too unpredictable. Push forward. Mira shouted. We end this. Squads advanced, cutting through drones and defensive energy barriers. Soldiers worked in perfect synchrony, moving like parts of a single organism. Blaster beams and explosives struck simultaneously, leaving chaos in their wake. At last, Mira and Haroon reached the command chamber. The alien leaders projected images, attempting communication, attempting to control human minds. But it was too late. Humans had evolved past obedience, past fear, past manipulation. Mira stepped forward. You wanted soldiers, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. You got executioners. With a single coordinated strike, the chamber's energy core shattered. The pulse ripped through the city, dismantling its systems, disabling drones, and leaving the aliens powerless. Shadows faltered, scattered, and fled. The remaining alien leaders fell, their technology useless, their authority broken. Outside, the green sky began to shift, the red streaks fading as the cities collapsed. Humans emerged victorious. They had turned the tide, using intelligence, strategy, and relentless courage. What the aliens had wanted, a fleet of obedient soldiers, they had received instead. Humans who would not be controlled, humans who would not forgive, humans who executed. Mira looked at her soldiers, pride and exhaustion mixing in her gaze. We did more than survive, she said quietly. We changed the game. Humanity does not just fight, it adapts. Humanity does not just follow, it leads. Humanity does not just obey, it executes. Lieutenant Haroon smiled, exhausted but triumphant. They'll remember this for a long time. The galaxy will remember us. And indeed, it would. Across the stars, word spread of humans who had faced impossible odds, who had defeated foes far stronger and more advanced, who had become executioners feared and respected across galaxies. Back on Earth, the fleet returned to cheers, but Mira and her team did not celebrate. They had survived, yes, but they had learned the cost of war, the price of ingenuity, and the weight of responsibility. Humanity had grown stronger, smarter, and more united. Deep in the ruins of the alien cities, sensors long dormant flickered to life. But this time, there was no one to control them. Humans had left a mark that could not be erased, a legacy of skill, courage, and uncompromising will. Mira stood on the bridge of her ship one last time, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown threats, full of possibilities. But humanity had proven one unbreakable truth: they were not pawns. They were survivors. They were warriors. They were executioners. And wherever the stars called them next, humanity would answer, not with fear, not with obedience, but with unmatched strength, strategy, and the unyielding will to survive and conquer. The green sky faded into the darkness of space. Humanity had risen, and the galaxy would never forget the name of those who had turned a call for soldiers into a legend of executioners.